Will anyone be held accountable for killing Shireen Abu Akleh? The Palestinian-American journalist was killed earlier this month while reporting on an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank. And instead of any real accountability, either immediately after her death or in the 3 weeks since, we've had nothing concrete from the Israeli government and some frankly awful rhetoric from some Israelis. Over the weekend, thousands of far-right activists, including members of Lahava, a racist Israeli extremist group, marched through the Old City to mark Jerusalem Day. This year, aside from the usual chants of death to Arabs and may your villages burn, the extremists were also mocking Shireen Abu Akleh. The Israeli news website, Plus 972, was on the ground documenting the demonstrators chanting, "Shireen is a whore." The website Middle East Eye documented others saying, "Shireen's dead, Jerusalem is ours." Horrific, disgusting stuff. So what have we learned about Shireen's killing in recent weeks? Well, for starters, the Israelis have so far suggested that Shireen and the other journalists were caught up in the crossfire between IDF soldiers and Palestinian militants in Jenin. That's what they suggested. They've also suggested the militants shot at Shireen or that journalists were possibly among the Palestinian gunmen themselves. That's what they said. What have we learned? Well, some newly released footage has come out showing what the scene was like around where Shireen was before the fatal shots were fired. And it's been verified by NBC News and other major outlets. Have a look. The man you heard there was yelling for an ambulance. CNN says it tracked down the man who filmed that clip, a 27-year-old resident of the Jenin refugee camp. Salim Awad told CNN, quote, "There was no conflict or confrontations at all. We were about 10 guys, give or take, walking around laughing and joking with the journalists. We thought it would be a safe area." In total, CNN reviewed 11 videos showing the scene and the nearby Israeli military convoy from different angles, before, during and after Abu Akleh was killed, including body cam footage released by the Israeli military and analysis of gunshots on the tree that was next to Shireen. In their investigation, CNN says videos obtained by them, corroborated by testimony from 8 eyewitnesses, an audio forensic analyst and an explosive weapons expert, suggest that Abu Akleh was shot dead in a targeted attack by Israeli forces. Not crossfire, a targeted attack, they say. The Palestinian Authority came to the same conclusion in its 2-week investigation. The Palestinian Attorney General said there were no militants in the area around where Shireen was. Quote, "The only shooting was by the occupation forces with the aim of killing." Israel has rejected both the PA's investigation and CNN's. Its defense minister, Benny Gantz, a retired general who used to head the Israeli military, he tweeted that any claim that the IDF intentionally harms journalists or uninvolved civilians is a blatant lie, and that CNN was promoting false assessments that ultimately boost terrorism. Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid rejected both in a phone call with Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Friday, calling the PA's investigation biased and CNN's a so-called investigation. But it isn't just CNN's investigation that suggests the Israeli military was behind a targeted attack against Shireen Abu Akleh. The award-winning Dutch-based Bellingcat Research Group conducted its own forensic analysis to reconstruct the scene of the incident. Based on their gathered evidence, they wrote, "This pattern of gunfire points to the possibility of intentional targeting of the journalists by the shooter rather than accidental crossfire." Again, the possibility of intentional targeting, not crossfire. That's Bellingcat, which also said the evidence supports the eyewitnesses who blame Israel. Last week, though, the IDF chief of staff said, quote, "There is one thing that can be determined with certainty. No soldier fired intentionally at a journalist. We investigated that. We checked it. That is the conclusion. There is no other." The thing is, it's not just the PA and CNN and Bellingcat. There's also the Associated Press, which reconstructed the events surrounding Shireen's killing. They sent reporters to investigate the scene and interview eyewitnesses. According to the AP, their findings, quote, "corroborate the analysis done by Bellingcat." They also found, as did CNN, that, quote, "the only confirmed presence of Palestinian militants was on the other side of the convoy, some 300 meters away, mostly separated from Abu Akleh by buildings and walls. They added, Israel says at least one militant was between the convoy and the journalists, but it has not provided any evidence or indicated the shooter's location. It's worth noting, however, that an Israeli military official said last week that they had identified the soldier's rifle that might have killed him. They say they need a bullet to reach a conclusion. At the moment, the bullet is with the Palestinians, who refuse to hand it over to the Israelis because they say they don't trust doing a joint investigation with the Israelis. The Palestinians are willing, however, they say, to turn it over to an independent investigation. That distrust, by the way, isn't coming out of nowhere. Let me remind you of what happened to Palestinian photojournalist Yasser Murtaja in 2018. Like Shireen, he was also wearing a press jacket while covering a standoff at the Gaza border between Palestinian protesters and the Israeli military. He was killed by Israeli fire. Then Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said in response, "We've seen dozens of cases where Hamas terrorists used ambulances dressed up in Red Crescent personnel and disguised themselves as journalists. We won't take any chances." Israel said it would investigate Yasser Murtaja's killing, but NBC's Raf Sanchez spoke to my colleague Ayman Mohyeldin after Shireen's death and talked about what happened to that investigation.
That was 4 years ago. The Israeli military said they were investigating then. I asked them today, can you give me the report, the findings that you made? They sent me a very short statement saying that they had looked into the incident. They had determined that there was no criminal activity by any Israeli soldiers, and they had closed the case. And that just gives you a sense of why Palestinians feel that they are unlikely to get the full story out of the Israeli military.
So where is the US in all of this? We have investigations and analyses from CNN, the AP, Bellingcat, the Palestinian Authority, all of which suggest the Israeli military was likely responsible for the killing of this journalist and maybe even targeted her directly. Shireen Abu Akleh, remember, was an American citizen. Shouldn't that mean something? Shouldn't the US government be launching its own investigation, as the Palestinians are insisting they do? And not just the Palestinians. Even members of Congress have called for a US investigation into her killing. But the State Department is sticking to its line that it wants a full, transparent and impartial investigation by the Israelis and the Palestinians. And yet the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported the week after Shireen's death that the IDF, the Israeli military, would not likely be pursuing a criminal investigation into what happened. Quote, the main reason for this is that there is no suspicion of a criminal act. The soldiers testified that they did not see the journalist at all and aimed their fire at gunmen nearby. While the State Department continues to suggest a criminal investigation by the Israelis hasn't been ruled out, we couldn't get any clarification on that from the Israeli embassy in the US or from the Israeli military. We asked. At a time like this, I think of the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudis and how the world, including the US, including Joe Biden, was outraged by what the Saudis did. I think of the American journalist Brent Renaud, killed in Ukraine, and how we all condemned Russia for it. And then I think of Shireen Abu Akleh, an American journalist killed in the occupied West Bank 3 weeks ago, most likely, according to journalistic investigations done so far, by the Israelis, and yet no condemnation by the US government. No accountability whatsoever. Joining me now to discuss all this is Shireen Abu Akleh's niece, Lina Abu Akleh. She's a Palestinian-Armenian researcher on settler colonialism and on human rights. She was born and raised in Jerusalem. Lina, thanks so much for joining me on the show. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I want to start by asking you, what went through your mind when you heard about what happened to your aunt? Had you been in touch with her before then?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for giving me the space to talk about Shireen and this heinous crime that was committed. To answer your question, it's very difficult to put into words how I felt in the moment that I heard the news. I was filled with so much anger, sadness, fear, and a sense of insecurity. Before that, a day before that, I was in contact with Shireen. And as always, I was asking her, where are you today? I sent her a message. I told her, did you go to Jenin today? And she said, yes, I'm in Jenin. And I automatically reacted saying, oh, okay, be careful. After that, we spoke a little about Wordle. That was one of our favorite games we used to play. So that was the last conversation. But before that, I had the chance to spend the entire weekend with Shireen. We were together. We had our usual Sunday family lunches in Ramallah. And it was just a regular day until our entire world was flipped upside down the moment we heard that Shireen was killed.
I'm so sorry to hear that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. Lina, I believe you went to the scene where your aunt, Shireen Abu Akleh, was killed on May the 11th. You saw the area. You've read the recent investigations that have come out that I mentioned a moment ago. Is there any doubt in your mind about who was behind the killing of your aunt?
Yes, we did go to the scene a few days following the incident, and we saw that it's a narrow street. There's no way that she could have been mistaken for someone else. She was clearly, as all evidence pointed out, she was clearly wearing a helmet and a bulletproof vest stating press. And even the videos and the evidence have shown. And no, I do not have a single doubt that Israeli occupation forces intentionally targeted Shireen Abu Akleh.
So last week, Lina, Ned Price, the spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, was asked about the findings of these recent journalistic investigations and whether the U.S. would do its own official investigation to follow up on what they found, especially given Shireen was an American citizen. Have a listen to his response.
We have made clear to both Israeli and Palestinian authorities that we expect the investigations to be transparent and impartial, a full, thorough accounting into the circumstances of the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. We do expect full accountability for those responsible for her killing.
Does that answer satisfy you? I mean, if you could speak to Ned Price directly, to Secretary of State Antony Blinken right now, what would you tell them? What is your message?
Well, no, it definitely doesn't satisfy us. But let me ask this. How many more Americans have to be killed for the Biden administration to act? Or for the Congress to actually take an action? What does that make Shireen less... Sorry, what does that make Shireen less unworthy of being American? Is it her identity as a victim or the identity of the perpetrator that they aren't continuing with an investigation as we were promised? And as you mentioned earlier, that not long ago when Khashoggi was killed, the entire Congress passed legislation. President Biden acted. Mechanisms to hold perpetrators accountable were put into place. Where is the enthusiasm about Shireen? Why isn't the same actions being taken? What is the point of holding our American passport if they are not protecting us or bringing us justice? It does not make sense to us. While we do appreciate even the phone call that was made by Secretary of State Blinken and his uptick condemnation, I ask another question. When will sanctions be imposed? When will action be taken? Shireen is the second American Palestinian to be killed in 6 months. In the span of 6 months. And how will they be held accountable? We actually, as a family, as a nation, we are seeking answers. There's clearly the double standards that is too painful, but it will not demoralize us as a family, and it would rather push us, because at the end of the day, Shireen was an American Palestinian female journalist, and she was killed by the Israeli authorities. And at the end of the day, as we were promised that we need that there will be a swift and transparent investigation, we are still calling for a swift and independent investigation by the U.S.